Hi, I'm Amara Ellison, and I'm in my mid-30s. And this is the story of how I went from helpful aunt to family traitor in a single week because I chose to trust my instincts instead of staying quiet. Before I get into it, please like, share, and subscribe if you want more stories like mine. Because this isn't just about a sick child or a messed up sister-in-law. It's about what happens when the person poisoning a child is the one everyone else calls a great mom. Growing up with a brother like Max meant always living in someone else's spotlight. Max Holloway, straight A student, varsity everything, full scholarship, tech prodigy. Our parents used to joke that he came out of the womb with a briefcase. By the time he was 30, he was already an executive at a tech firm, pulling in more money in a year than I'd seen in my entire life as a nurse. I loved him, I really did, but I'd be lying if I said it didn't sting sometimes to be the responsible little sister while he was the golden child. So when he married Cassandra 9 years ago, I expected someone equally golden. And at first glance, she was. Cassandra Holloway had the kind of beauty that made people stare in grocery store aisles. Perfect waves of dark hair, Pilates body, pristine nails that never seemed to chip, even with a kid. She ran an Instagram account full of smoothie bowls, sunlit yoga poses, and captions about clean living and mindful motherhood. Everyone said Max had hit the jackpot. I tried to believe it. Amara, thanks for coming over on such short notice, Max said that day, pulling me into a quick hug as I stepped into their beautiful colonial-style home in Meebrook. Granite counters, white cabinets, everything staged like a magazine spread. The investor call can't be rescheduled, and Cassandra has her pottery class, he added, already glancing at his watch. Pottery class, I repeated, setting my bag down. Right, no problem. Where's my favorite niece? Ruby's upstairs in her room. She hasn't been feeling great today, but Cassandra says it's just some bug going around Pinewood Elementary. He tried to sound casual, but something in his voice pulled at me. A little too light, a little too practiced. Didn't she just recover from something last month? I asked, frowning. My memory of Ruby included a lot of recent sniffles, pale cheeks, and she's under the weather again. Max shrugged, adjusting his Rolex like it might give him the answer. Kids, right? Always catching something. There's chicken noodle soup in the fridge if she gets hungry. Cassandra says no snacks before dinner, though. Got it. Go nail your pitch, I told him, forcing a smile. I've got this. After Max left in his Tesla, the house felt unnaturally quiet, like it was holding its breath. I climbed the stairs and knocked gently on Ruby's door. Aunt Amara, came a small, weak voice. My stomach tightened. I pushed the door open. 8-year-old Ruby, usually a whirlwind of laughter and glitter and mismatched socks, was curled up in bed. Her face was ghostly pale, with smudges under her normally bright hazel eyes. The room smelled faintly medicinal and stale, like someone had sprayed too much disinfectant over something rotting. Hey, sweetheart, I said softly, sitting on the edge of the bed. Your dad said you're not feeling too good. My stomach hurts again, she whispered, clutching her favorite stuffed unicorn. And I'm so tired. Her skin was warm under my fingers. Not a raging fever, but not nothing either. Her forehead felt slightly clammy. The nurse in me woke up immediately, sharpening, cataloging symptoms, connecting dots. Have you told your mom about your stomach hurting? I asked. Ruby nodded, eyes flaking down to the comforter. She says I'm being overdramatic, that I need to toughen up and stop complaining. A chill ran down my spine. I've worked as a registered nurse at Riverside Medical Center long enough to know the difference between a kid faking it and a kid who's genuinely unwell. Something in Ruby's posture, how she curled inward like she was protecting herself from more than just pain, made my chest ache. Does your stomach hurt a lot, Ruby? Like, more than just sometimes? I asked, keeping my tone light. Almost every day after lunch, she said quietly. And sometimes I get really dizzy at school. Mrs. Henderson had to take me to the nurse twice last week. Dizzy, chronic abdominal pain, fatigue. My mind started flipping through possibilities like flashcards, none of them comforting. What do you usually have for lunch? I asked. Mom makes me special wraps, Ruby said. She says they're super healthy and will help me grow stronger. And sometimes she makes me special smoothies too. Her voice dropped even lower. She says other moms don't know about the ingredients she uses. There was a tight, secretive pride in those words that didn't belong to an 8-year-old. And when did all this start? I asked, trying to keep my face neutral. After my birthday party, Ruby said. Remember when I got sick from too much ice cream cake? I remembered. That had been 5 months ago. No child stays sick from ice cream cake for 5 months. Ruby, can you show me where it hurts the most? She pointed to the lower right side of her abdomen, above her hip, an area that made my brain flash red warning lights. Does it hurt when I press here? I asked, gently touching the spot. She winced. Ow, yes, a lot. How about here? I moved my hand slightly. Not as much? I swallowed hard. And do you feel sick after eating anything else? Or just your mom's special wraps and smoothies? Ruby thought, face scrunched in concentration. I feel worst after Mommy's wraps, and sometimes the smoothies. But don't tell her I said that, she added quickly, panic flickering in her eyes. She gets really, really mad when I don't finish my food. My heart rate spiked. What happens when she gets mad? I asked gently. Ruby's eyes filled with tears. She says I'm ungrateful, that I don't appreciate how hard she works to keep me healthy. Sometimes she makes me sit at the table until I finish everything, even if it takes hours. One time I sat there until bedtime. I squeezed her small hand, fighting to keep my own expression calm. Inside, my thoughts were anything but. You're not in any trouble, Ruby, I promise, I said. Does your dad know about your stomach hurting like this? Daddy works a lot, she said. Mommy says he doesn't understand nutrition like she does, so we don't need to bother him with silly stuff. Silly stuff. Chronic pain, dizziness, exhaustion. A child who looked like she was slowly fading. Aunt Amara, Ruby whispered, am I dying? The words hit me like a punch. No, sweetie, I said immediately, swallowing past the lump in my throat. Absolutely not. But I do want to help you feel better. Is it okay if I look in your backpack? I want to check something. She nodded. I crossed the room, grabbed her purple backpack, and found her insulated lunch bag. Inside was one of the infamous special wraps. At first glance, it looked normal. Whole wheat tortilla, turkey, lettuce. But when I leaned closer, a faint, bitter, chemical smell curled up to meet me. Every hair on my arm stood on end. I wrapped the whole thing in tissues and tucked it into my purse, my heartbeat loud in my ears. Aunt Amara, am I in trouble? Ruby asked again, voice barely audible. Absolutely not, I said firmly. You are the bravest girl I know. I just want to make sure your tummy isn't being upset by something it shouldn't be. Later, while Ruby watched a movie downstairs with some plain crackers and ginger ale, I stepped into the hallway and called Naomi. Hey, I need a huge favor, I said the second she picked up. No questions asked. Can you run a test on a food sample for me? Off the books. Naomi paused. Amara, that's not exactly... It's about Ruby, I cut in. Max's daughter. Something's wrong. Really wrong. I'm worried Cassandra might be... I couldn't even say the word out loud yet. Bring it in, Naomi said finally. I'll stay late. I drove the wrap over to Riverside Medical with my hands clenched so tightly around the steering wheel that my knuckles went white. By the time I got back, Ruby had fallen asleep on the couch, curled into a tight little ball. That's when my phone buzzed. Cassandra. Is Ruby behaving? She asked without any greeting. Her voice had that sharp, brittle edge it always carried with me, like every word was a test I was failing. She's asleep, I said. She's really not feeling well, Cassandra. I think she should see a doctor soon. Don't start with that again, Cassandra snapped. She's perfectly fine. She just likes the attention you give her when she acts sick. She has significant abdominal pain and chronic fatigue, I said, my patience thinning. That's not acting. I'm her mother, Amara, not you. Never you. Her voice turned icy. Stay in your lane. I'm just concerned. Concerned, she scoffed. Please, you've always been jealous that Max chose me, that we have this beautiful family and you don't. Don't use my daughter as a replacement for the children you can't have. The words sliced straight through the softest part of me. My infertility wasn't a secret, but it wasn't something I handed to people as a weapon either. Cassandra had always grabbed it with both hands. This isn't about me, I said quietly, every syllable shaking. It's about Ruby's health. Don't test me, Amara, she hissed. I decide what's best for my daughter, not you. Are we clear? She hung up before I could answer. I stood there in the dim hallway, listening to the soft sound of Ruby's breathing from the living room, and I realized something very simple and very terrifying. If I did nothing, Ruby would keep getting worse. So I made a decision that night. The kind of decision that rips a family apart and doesn't care where the pieces land. I was going to take Ruby to a doctor, behind Cassandra's back, no matter what it cost me. The next morning, I woke up with that decision sitting on my chest like a weight. For a second, I almost convinced myself I'd imagined it all, that I was overreacting, that it was just another virus or some undiagnosed food sensitivity, and Cassandra was intense, but not dangerous. Then I remembered the way Ruby had asked if she was dying. I remembered the bitter, chemical smell from that wrap. And I remembered Cassandra's voice, cold and sharp. I decide what's best for my daughter, not you. No, I wasn't imagining anything. Around noon, I parked my car outside Pinewood Elementary and checked the time again, even though I was 10 minutes early. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. Technically, I wasn't on the pickup list. Technically, I had no permission to be there. But technically, I also wasn't willing to watch my niece slowly fade away because the adults around her were too scared or too blinded by love to see what was happening. I watched parents gather in clumps by the school doors talking about PTA meetings and soccer practice. They all looked so normal, as if none of them had to worry that someone inside their own house might be the threat. Then the classroom doors opened and kids spilled out like a flood. When Ruby saw me, her eyes went wide. Aunt Amara, what are you doing here? Where's Mom? My heart clenched. We're going on a little adventure, I said, pasting on a smile. Your mom knows all about it. That was a lie. I knew it. God knew it. But I also knew, in my bones, that if I tried to do this the polite, proper way, Ruby might not get another chance. Ruby hesitated for a second, then hurried over and slipped her small hand into mine. That trust nearly broke me. Where are we going? She asked. To see a friend of mine, I said. He's a doctor. We're just going to check on that tummy of yours, make sure everything's okay. Her face fell. Mommy says doctors give shots, and they really, really hurt. Sometimes doctors need to use needles, I admitted, but only to help you feel better. And Dr. Foster is super gentle, I promise. She thought about it, chewing on her lip. Will you hold my hand if I get a shot? The whole time, I said, and I meant it with everything in me. On the way to Riverside Medical Center, I kept glancing at the rearview mirror. Ruby stared out the window, shoulders hunched, like she was trying to make herself smaller. I wondered how many times she'd done that at the dining table, staring at a plate until cold food blurred into tears. Do you think I'm being dramatic? She asked suddenly. No, I said immediately. I think your body is trying very hard to tell us something, and I think you're very brave for speaking up. She looked surprised, then turned back to the window. When we arrived, I led her through the sliding doors, the smell of antiseptic and coffee washing over us. This was my world, my home turf. But I'd never been so afraid to walk into a hospital in my life. Amara, a male voice called, and I turned to see Dr. Brandon Foster walking towards us, stethoscope around his neck, white coat slightly wrinkled from a long shift. His warm brown eyes flicked to Ruby and softened. This must be Ruby, he said, crouching down so he was eye level with her. I'm Dr. Foster. Your aunt tells me your tummy's been bothering you. Ruby nodded, clutching her unicorn backpack straps. Can you tell me more about that? He asked gently as we walked toward an exam room. When did it start? How does it feel? By the time she finished describing everything, how it hurt more after lunch, how dizzy she got, how tired she was, his expression had tightened in a way I recognized too well. He performed a gentle, thorough exam, pressing on her abdomen, listening to her heart and lungs, checking her eyes and skin. Ruby flinched when he pressed the same spot that had made her wince for me. When he stepped outside the room with me, my heart was already pounding. Avery, sorry, force of habit, Amara, he corrected himself, running a hand through his hair. How long has this been going on? 5 months, apparently, I said. Her mother hasn't brought her in even once. His jaw clenched. I want to run some tests, comprehensive blood work, liver function, kidney function, metals panel, the whole thing. You have a suspicion, I said quietly. Don't you? Several, he admitted. None of them good. Her symptoms are consistent with chronic poisoning, among other possibilities. The hallway tilted slightly. I grabbed the rail. Poisoning, I repeated, the word foreign and heavy in my mouth. I'm not saying that's what it is, he said carefully. I'm saying it's one of the things I need to rule out. But we both knew he didn't believe for a second that he'd rule it out. While we waited for the lab tech to take Ruby's blood, my phone started buzzing. Cassandra. The screen lit up with her name, over and over. First a call, then another, then a text. Where is Ruby? Answer me. Amara, if this is some stunt... Another call, my stomach twisted. I declined it. For the first time in 9 years, I ignored Cassandra on purpose. She responded with a flurry of messages. I swear to God, if you took her without telling me, I'm calling the police. This is kidnapping. You have no right, I typed back with shaking fingers. She's safe. She's seeing a doctor. She needed medical attention. The reply was instantaneous. You have no right. I'm her mother. Bring her home now. I stared at the words until they blurred. Amara, Brandon's voice pulled me back. You okay? No, I said honestly, but that's not important. He gave me a searching look, then nodded. We'll get answers. Ruby handled the blood draw better than most adults. She whimpered a little, squeezed my hand so hard I thought my fingers might bruise, then relaxed when it was over. You did amazing, I said, pushing a piece of hair behind her ear. You are officially braver than most grown-ups I know. She managed a tiny smile. While she sipped apple juice, Brandon stepped out to check on the labs. The minutes stretched until they felt like hours. I tried to distract Ruby with a game on my phone, but my mind kept spiraling. What if I was wrong? What if this was some rare autoimmune disorder and I'd just blown up my entire family over nothing? What if I was right? That last question was the worst one of all. 20 minutes later, Brandon came back holding a manila folder. His face was pale. Amara, he said quietly, can I speak with you privately for a moment? My heart stopped. Ruby! She's fine for the moment, he said quickly. Nurse Carla's with her. Come with me. In his office, surrounded by cartoon animal posters and pictures drawn by patients, the air felt too thick to breathe. Say it, I whispered. He sat down across from me, folding his hands. Ruby is showing unmistakable signs of arsenic poisoning, he said gently. Low-level exposure over an extended period of time. For a moment, the words didn't connect to anything. They just floated there, meaningless. Arsenic, I repeated mechanically. At current levels, it's not immediately life-threatening, he continued. But continued exposure could cause permanent organ damage, neurological issues, or death. The room tilted for real this time. I grabbed the edge of the desk. You're certain? I asked, knowing the answer. Yes, he hesitated. And there's something else. The lab called me a few minutes ago. Naomi Rodriguez? My friend, I said, throat tight. She found traces of arsenic in the food sample you brought in, he said. The wrap. The pattern suggests chronic, intentional exposure through food. Intentional, I whispered. Not environmental? He shook his head. Not a leaky pipe. Not contaminated soil. This is targeted. The words came rushing out like they were being dragged from my chest. Cassandra makes Ruby special wraps, I said. Special smoothies. She won't let anyone else prepare her food. She says other moms don't know about the ingredients she uses. Ruby feels worse after eating them. Brandon exhaled slowly, like he'd been hoping I wouldn't say that. I'm legally obligated to report this, he said. Child Protective Services will be notified immediately. The police, too. I nodded. I felt numb and electrified all at once. Her father, Max, he has no idea, I said. He thinks Ruby just catches everything. Call him now, Brandon said firmly. He needs to get here immediately. I dialed Max with shaking hands. He answered on the second ring. Amara, what's going on? Cassandra says you took Ruby from school. She says you're... Max, I interrupted. You need to come to Riverside Medical, right now. Ruby is safe, but she is not okay. There was a beat of silence. I'm on my way, he said, and hung up. He arrived in record time, his BMW screeching into the emergency lot. When he burst through the doors and saw me, he looked like he'd aged 10 years in one afternoon. Where is she? He demanded. Where's Ruby? Cassandra's losing her mind. She says you kidnapped her. She says... Max, I said, grabbing his arm. Listen to me. Ruby is sick. Really sick. Dr. Foster will explain. In the consultation room, Brandon went over everything. The blood work, the levels, the timing, the food sample. Arsenic. Chronic exposure, most likely through ingestion at home. Max's face moved from confusion to disbelief to something like horror. That's impossible, he said finally, voice cracking. Cassandra would never hurt Ruby. She loves her more than anything. She's obsessed with her health. That's exactly the problem, Brandon said gently. The evidence is very clear, Mr. Holloway. Max shook his head. No, you're wrong. You have to be wrong. I put a hand on his shoulder. Max, we're not talking about opinions. We're talking about lab results. How could I have missed this? He whispered. All those times she was sick. All those bugs. All those times Cassandra said a doctor wasn't necessary and I just believed her. Because she's your wife, I said softly. Because you trusted her. Because no one wants to believe the person they share a bed with might be capable of this. Before he could respond, the door to the waiting area slammed open. There she is, a voice shrieked. Cassandra stormed in, hair perfectly styled, makeup immaculate, fury blazing in her eyes. A security guard followed closely behind, trying and failing to keep up. She jabbed a manicured finger at me. That's the woman who kidnapped my daughter, she screamed. I want her arrested, right now. The entire waiting room went silent. And in that moment, I knew this was the line. Once we crossed it, there was no going back. For any of us. Cassandra's voice sliced through the hospital lobby like a blade. That's her! She kidnapped my daughter! Arrest her! Heads turned. A couple in the corner froze mid-coffee sip. A child clutched his mother's scrubs. The entire room shifted toward the scene unfolding, toward Cassandra, spitfire fury and immaculate eyebrows, pointing at me like I was some monster. The hospital security guard, a tired-looking man in his 50s, lifted a hand. "Ma'am, please lower your voice. This is a hospital." But Cassandra was beyond hearing. Her rage was wildfire, bright, consuming, impossible to contain. Max stood up slowly beside me, his face oddly pale. "Cassandra," he said quietly, "what are you doing here?" She rounded on him. "What am I doing? What are you doing? Why aren't you calling the police? Why aren't you protecting your family from her?" Her voice cracked on her, like I was some bitter intruder clawing at her perfect life. "Cass," Max said again, but something in his tone had changed, like he was finally listening, finally seeing. "Stop for a second." "No," she snapped. "I will not stop. She took Ruby from school without permission. That is kidnapping. She had no right." "She had every right," I said sharply, unable to stay silent. My hands were shaking, but my voice wasn't. "Someone had to help Ruby." Cassandra's head twisted toward me. Her eyes were dark, flat, shiny, almost reptilian. "You," she hissed, "are sick. You have been obsessed with my daughter since the day she was born, trying to play mommy because you can't be one." The words hit me like a slap, brutal, precise, targeted. But before I could respond, Dr. Brandon Foster stepped forward. "Mrs. Holloway," he said, his tone firm and professional, "I'm Dr. Foster. I've been treating your daughter today." "I don't care who you are," she snapped. "I want my daughter, and I want that woman arrested." "Mrs. Holloway," Dr. Foster repeated, "Ruby's blood work came back. She is suffering from acute arsenic poisoning." For one fraction of a second, less than a heartbeat, Cassandra's face went blank. Not confused, not shocked, blank. Then the expression snapped back into place, flawlessly composed, like someone slamming a door on a secret room. "That's absurd," she said coldly. "Completely ridiculous. Arsenic? Are you insane? She has a stomach bug." "No," Dr. Foster said. "She has arsenic in her system at measurable, concerning levels, consistent with chronic exposure." "You're lying," she spat. "Or she is lying." She pointed at me again. "She has always been jealous. Always. This is her little fantasy because she can't stand that I have the life she wants." "Cassandra," Max said quietly. His voice trembled. "They found arsenic in her food, in the wrap. That did it." Her mask slipped. Fear flashed across her face, real, raw, unfiltered, before she smothered it. But I saw it. So did Max. So did the guard. So did Brandon. And apparently, so did the man walking through the sliding doors at that exact moment. "Mrs. Holloway?" a calm male voice called. We all turned. Detective Lawrence Harris approached, dressed in a charcoal suit, badge clipped to his belt. He carried himself like a man who'd seen everything and never overreacted. "I'm Detective Harris," he said. "I need to speak with you regarding your daughter's toxicology results." Cassandra straightened, chin rioting upward. "I'm not answering a single question without my lawyer." "Actually, ma'am," Detective Harris replied with unsettling politeness, "you do." "What?" she snapped. "I'm here with a warrant," he said, removing a folded document from his jacket. "Your home is currently being searched. Any food items prepared for your daughter are being seized as evidence." Cassandra froze. Completely. No flinch, no blink. Just a blank, eerie stillness. Then, "This is insane," she said finally, voice rising. "This is her doing." She jabbed a finger at me again. "This is all her revenge fantasy. She's bitter. She's barren. She wants my life, my husband, my daughter, everything I have. She's been jealous since day one." Heat crawled up my chest. But I didn't look away from her, not this time. "The blood tests don't lie," Dr. Foster said firmly. "The independent lab analysis doesn't lie. The symptoms don't lie. Ruby's condition is a medical fact." "You went through her things?" Cassandra shrieked at me. "You went through my daughter's lunch? You snooped in my home? Bee." "I had every right," I said quietly, but with a steel I didn't know I had. Because someone had to protect her, and it clearly wasn't you. That was it. Something inside Cassandra snapped. She lunged toward me, literally lunged. The security guard caught her mid-step, arms locked around her biceps. "Let me go," she screamed. "You have no idea what it's like, what Ruby took from me, what she took from me." "What Ruby took from you," Max repeated, voice cracking. Cassandra twisted, wild-eyed. "You never understood, none of you did. Ruby took everything from me. My body, my freedom, my life was perfect before she came along." The room went dead silent. Every parent in the lobby was staring, every nurse, every doctor. Max's face looked like it had been carved into stone. "She's our daughter," he whispered. "Our baby girl. Cassandra, what are you saying?" "What I should have said years ago," she spat. "I gave up everything for that child. Everything. And no one, not you, not her," she pointed violently at me, "ever cared how I suffered, how hard it is being a real mother, how no one ever sees the sacrifices." "That's enough," Detective Harris said, stepping forward. "Mrs. Holloway, you are under arrest." "For what?" she screamed. "For the attempted murder of Ruby Holloway," he said calmly, "and felony child abuse." Handcuffs clicked around her wrists. Cassandra's face twisted into something monstrous. Rage, panic, disbelief, and a cold, venomous hatred aimed straight at me. "This isn't over," she snarled as the guard pulled her away. "You think you've won? You think you're the hero? You ruined my life, Amara. So I'll ruin yours. Max will see what you really are. He'll see it." "Save it for your lawyer," Detective Harris said, escorting her toward the doors. Her screams echoed through the lobby until the doors closed behind her. And then, all at once, the silence collapsed. Max sank into a chair, like the weight of everything had finally crushed him. I sat beside him, unsure if he even wanted me near. "How did I not see it?" he whispered. "How did I miss everything? The wraps, the smoothies, the way she'd get angry if anyone else fed Ruby. I thought it was just motherly instinct." "No," I said softly. "It was control and manipulation and something deeply wrong." He buried his face in his hands. She almost killed our daughter." "And you saved her," I whispered. "No," he said, "you did." We sat there a long time, listening to Ruby's laughter down the hall, with a nurse who was blowing up a glove like a balloon. Life, real life, still existed. Outside the lies, outside the poison. But nothing would ever be the same. 3 months later, I would find myself sitting in a courtroom so still and quiet, it felt like a church made of glass, cold, echoing, and ready to shatter at any second. But before that came everything else. Ruby's treatment, Max's unraveling, the slow, brutal reassembling of our family around a truth none of us wanted, but all of us had to face. Ruby spent the next week in the hospital undergoing chelation therapy, medication to pull the arsenic out of her bloodstream and organs. Watching her hooked up to IVs, her tiny fingers absent-mindedly rubbing at the adhesive tape on her arm, was like being stabbed repeatedly in the same spot. She never complained, not once. Every time the nurse came in to take vitals or administer meds, Ruby just squeezed my hand, her lip trembling, but her chin lifted. "Am I being dramatic?" she asked me once, voice small. "No," I whispered fiercely. "You're being strong, stronger than any of us." Meanwhile, Max was drowning in guilt. He barely slept, barely ate, barely spoke except to ask doctors question after question he already knew the answers to. He alternated between heartbreak and volcanic rage that made his hands shake. "How did I not notice?" he asked me at least 12 times a day. Because Cassandra was brilliant at hiding it. Because he trusted her. Because he never thought he'd need to protect his child from her own mother. But those weren't answers he was ready to hear. And then, 3 months later, came the trial. It wasn't long. It didn't need to be. The evidence was a mountain. Cassandra's defense was a single broken matchstick. The courtroom was packed on the first day. Reporters scribbling notes, photographers lining the hallway like vultures hoping for a close-up of the beautiful suburban mother-turned-poisoner. I sat with Max on one side of the gallery. Ruby wasn't allowed in the courtroom. Thank God for that. She stayed with Max's parents, painting pictures and practicing cartwheels, the entire world blissfully out of her sight for once. Cassandra was escorted in wearing a tailored navy suit. She looked thinner, sharper, like all the softness had been peeled away and only the steel core remained. But her expression? Chillingly serene. As if she was the victim here. District Attorney Victoria Reeves, a woman with razor-sharp cheekbones and an even sharper reputation, opened the prosecution with a single sentence. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this case is not about a sick child. It is about a mother who made her own child sick." Gasps rustled through the room. Reeves wasted no time. She presented the toxicology reports, the food analysis, the photographs of Cassandra's kitchen. Arsenic trioxide hidden behind almond flour and baking spices. She walked the jury through Cassandra's internet search history, each line projected on a large screen for the room to see. How to poison someone slowly. Symptoms of arsenic exposure Munchausen. By proxy signs. How to avoid detection. Child illness symptoms. Attention sympathy. Attention. Each search felt like another nail hammered into Cassandra's coffin. When Reeves asked, "Mrs. Holloway, can you explain these searches?" Cassandra crossed her legs, lifted her chin, and said, "I enjoy true crime podcasts. Is that illegal?" The jury shifted uncomfortably. Even her own attorney blinked. Then Reeves brought out the almond butter jar. Full, clean label, innocent looking. "Laboratory testing found commercial-grade arsenic in this jar," she said. "This almond butter was used exclusively in the special wraps Ruby Holloway was forced to eat." "Mrs. Holloway, do you have an explanation?" Cassandra's jaw twitched. "It must have been contamination," she said, "from the store." Reeves slammed her hands on the table, her voice booming. "Contamination that only affected the food you prepared and nowhere else in the home? Contamination that matched the arsenic hidden in your kitchen?" The courtroom fell silent. Cassandra swallowed, hard. Then came Max's testimony. He took the stand wearing a crisp suit that hung wrong on him, loose around the shoulders, like he'd lost weight he couldn't afford to lose. "I loved her," he said. His voice cracked on the words. "I trusted her, with my life, with our daughter's life, and all this time she was hurting Ruby, on purpose." Reeves nodded sympathetically. "Mr. Holloway, did you ever suspect your wife was poisoning your daughter?" "No," he said. "Because no one thinks the person they married is capable of trying to kill their child." Max looked directly at Cassandra then, and I'll never forget that look. Equal parts heartbreak, fury, and something worse, disbelief that someone he'd once adored could be so hollow inside. Cassandra broke. "You never loved me," she suddenly screamed, startling even her lawyer. The judge banged his gavel. "Mrs. Holloway." "You only loved Ruby," Cassandra roared. "Everything was always about Ruby. You never cared about me. Her needs always came first. It was always about her." The courtroom froze. Reporters scribbled so fast their pens squeaked. Cassandra's lawyer hissed, "Stop talking," trying to pull her down, but she jerked away wildly. "What about what I needed?" she shrieked. "What about my life, my body, my dreams? She ruined everything, everything." The judge finally ordered her removed from the courtroom. She was dragged out screaming about how no one understood her suffering, how she sacrificed everything, how she was the victim. The jury looked horrified. The psychiatric evaluation sealed her fate. Severe narcissistic personality disorder, Munchausen syndrome by proxy, obsessive need for admiration and attention derived from having an ill child. Broken traits woven into a monster's tapestry. The verdict took less than 2 hours. Guilty on all counts. Attempted murder, felony child abuse, felony poisoning, child endangerment. The judge sentenced Cassandra to 18 years in prison, with zero contact allowed between her and Ruby. Max cried silently. I held his hand, and somewhere in the gallery, a reporter whispered, "How could a mother do this?" I knew the answer. Some mothers aren't mothers. Some are poison-wearing human skin. 7 months after the verdict, Max's backyard no longer felt like a place where something terrible had once hovered, invisible but suffocating. Instead, it felt alive. It felt like a place where healing had roots. Sunlight poured through the tall oak trees, scattering gold across the fresh grass. The grill hissed with the smell of barbecued chicken. My mom had brought her famous potato salad. My dad was laughing too loud at a joke my uncle told. Ruby was shrieking with joy. Real joy. Not forced smiles, not tired nods, not the dull gray compliance she used to wear like a second skin. This time, she barreled across the lawn in bright pink leggings and a little t-shirt with a glitter unicorn on it, her hair tied up in a messy ponytail, her cheeks flushed from running. "Aunt Amara, watch this," she called. She did a cartwheel, a wobbly one, not perfect. But God, it was perfect to me. "That was amazing," I said, clapping loudly. "You're going to join the Olympics soon." She giggled and ran back toward Max, who was pretending he couldn't catch her. She dodged him, squealing when he grabbed her and swung her up into the air. It was the kind of laughter that filled a place you didn't even realize was empty. Max walked over to me after a while, handing me a glass of sweet tea. "She looks good, doesn't she?" "Better than good," I said. "She looks whole." He nodded, eyes softening as he watched Ruby chase her cousin with a foam sword. There was a sadness in his gaze, too, one that hadn't faded, even after the sentencing. "I got a letter yesterday," he said suddenly. "From Cassandra?" He nodded. "What did she want?" He set the tea down, rubbing the back of his neck. "Her lawyer says she wants to apologize. To Ruby. Says she's been getting help in prison and wants to make amends." I didn't respond right away. I wanted to choose the right words, not the impulsive ones. Eventually, I asked, "What did you tell them?" "That it's not happening." His voice was firm, but his fingers trembled just slightly as he lifted his glass. "Some things can't be forgiven or undone." She hurt Ruby, deliberately, slowly, repeatedly, and she enjoyed the attention she got from it. He swallowed hard. "You know, the prison psychiatrist diagnosed her officially with Munchausen by proxy and severe narcissistic personality disorder," he said. "Apparently she showed all the hallmark patterns: manipulation, control, the need to be needed, the craving for sympathy, the obsession with being seen as the perfect mother." "Those labels make sense," I said quietly. "They don't excuse anything." "No," he said. "No, they don't." We stood there in silence for a moment, watching Ruby, watching her be a kid again, watching her run without getting dizzy, watching her laugh without fear, watching healing unfold in tiny, beautiful pieces. Max exhaled slowly. "Did she contact you too, Cassandra?" I hesitated. This was the part I'd kept hidden from him, the one thing I wasn't sure how to talk about without reopening wounds he was barely stitching together. "Yes," I said finally, "a few weeks ago." His eyebrows drew together. "Through her lawyer?" "No," I shook my head. "It was smuggled out. Another inmate must have helped her. She sent it directly to my address." His jaw tightened. "What did it say?" I looked down at the ground, at the sunlight cracking through the grass. "Mostly rage," I said, "blaming me, accusing me of ruining her life, saying I'd stolen her husband and daughter and destroyed everything she built." "Jesus," Max whispered. "There was one paragraph," I continued quietly, "that I can't forget." I paused, steadying my voice. "She wrote, 'You think you're the hero of this story, Amara, but you're not. You were always jealous of what I had. You wanted my life, my husband, my daughter. You destroyed me because you couldn't create anything of your own. Barren women always destroy what fertile women build.'" Max's face twisted with disgust. "She said that?" "Yes." "What did you do with the letter?" "I burned it," I said. "Some toxins are best neutralized with fire." He nodded slowly, swallowing hard. "Thank you for not showing me. I don't think I could have handled that back then." "I know," I said gently. "That's why I didn't." He put a hand on my shoulder. "She can't hurt us anymore." "No," I said, watching Ruby flip over the grass again. "She really can't." Ruby ran up to me just then, breathless and glowing. "Aunt Amara, Dad says I can have a sleepover next weekend if you say yes." My heart melted instantly. "Of course you can. We'll make popcorn and watch movies and braid your hair and stay up way too late." She squealed and raced back across the yard, shouting, "She said yes!" I watched her run, healthy, giggling, sunshine in human form, and I felt something inside me loosen, something that had been stretched tight for months, maybe years. I leaned against the porch railing, closing my eyes for a moment as warm air brushed past my face. For the first time in a long time, I believed that the future could be safe. But there was one more thing I needed to say. And it wasn't for Max, or for Ruby. It was for the camera, the invisible audience I'd been speaking to since the day this nightmare began. So I turned toward all of you, truth sitting heavy but clear inside me. Here's the question I can't shake. If you suspected someone was hurting a child in your family, would you risk everything? Your relationships, your reputation, maybe even legal trouble, to protect them? Or would you convince yourself you were overreacting and hope someone else would be brave enough to step up? Because somewhere right now, I promise you, there's another Ruby, another child suffering silently, another parent hiding poison behind perfect smiles. And the alarm bells are ringing for someone just like me. The only question left is, will you be brave enough to hear them